Hello and welcome to When They Popped. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Mary, and today we're thrilled to welcome one of the most influential choreographers of the Y2K era, and honestly, of all time. He's the creative mind behind some of Britney Spears' most iconic videos and has worked with everyone from Janet Jackson to Beyonce. He's also been a judge on So You Think You Can Dance and creative director for The X Factor. This man's resume continues to blow our mind. Safe to say he's a dream interview. Brian Friedman, welcome to When They Popped.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Brian, we couldn't be more excited to have you on today. You've had such an incredible career. You look so young, first of all, for doing all the things that you've done. Like, oh my God. Well, to get us started and to get you back in that Y2K sort of mindset, we found some real gems online.
Okay.
Some photos of your work across the years.
Oh, gosh.
And we thought it would be so fun to revisit some of these pictures. And you can tell us any memories or stories that come to mind when you see these pictures.
Does that work for you? You down?
It works perfect for me. I am a nostalgic type of person, so let's go down memory lane.
Well,
you're in the right place.
And full disclaimer, I stole a lot of these from your Instagram, so they
Copy
may
that.
look familiar. So the first picture we have is Brian and Britney Spears. We have a couple of them together. This is the first of a few. They're making kissy faces at the camera. She's wearing an iconic microphone headset. Can everybody see this?
Yes. Okay.
Oh.
What comes to mind when you see the Princess of Pop, Miss Britney Spears?
I mean, honestly, what comes to mind the most right now, because it's a rough moment in pop news right now, what's going down with her. So I just immediately felt like, I felt sad that it's not that we're seeing of her right now, this moment in time. But that was such a good time. It was my favorite tour I ever danced on, just because it was a perfect storm. You know, it was the right year, the right artist, the right music, the right age for me. I was at such a, pivotal point in my life and my career. And it was the year 2000. We were so happy that the world didn't explode because we were all not sure if New Year's 2000 was just going to be the end of civilization as we knew it. So yeah, it was just my favorite year. One of my favorite years ever.
That's so incredible to hear, Brian. How did you first get connected with Britney?
My friend TJ, who was like the famous Britney dancer, he was dancing for Britney at the moment, and we had grown up together, and he invited me over to her hotel in LA. She was there shooting, I want to say it was the Sometimes music video. And I went over and I was hanging out with the dancers at the hotel because they were on tour at the time and they shot the video at the same time. And he was like, okay, let's go over and see Britney. And so we went to her room and I met her briefly. And she was just incredibly sweet and normal and outgoing, bubbly, all of the things. And shortly thereafter, I was asked to dance for her for the Grammys, which I didn't know at the time what I was going to be doing when I got there. I just knew that the choreographer, Wade Robson, didn't want to dance, and he was supposed to be a dancer in it as well as choreographing. And he said, this is just too much. I need to be behind the scenes and behind the camera. Can you come and learn this today for the Grammys tomorrow? And I was like, of course, sure. So I ran to rehearsal and found out that dancers were doing many different parts and tracks in this performance. But I myself was going to be a soldier with my face covered and holding these sticks that had different sort of like mechanical versions of me on either side. It was 5 dancers in a row, and the center dancer controlled all of the dancers. And I was just mortified. I was like, this is my moment. I'm finally getting to dance for Britney, and my face is covered. And when I was on stage, I'm like seeing all these artists in the front row and just thinking, thank God my face is covered right now, because this is not how I wanted to do this. But that was my gateway into working for Britney. And then I was on tour with a group called LFO, the Light Funky Ones. They sang the Abercrombie and Fitch song. And myself and Kevin Federline were roommates and backup dancers for them. And we were opening act for Britney. And I only actually took the job because I knew it was an opening act for Britney and I wanted to get in there and be around her. And we were in Orlando and we were hanging out in the jacuzzi, and it was like maybe the last week of tour. And I said to her, I want to dance for you. I want to be in your show. And they were finishing that leg, and then it was going to be a revamp of the show. Same tour, just a little bit of an upgrade. And she said, okay. So when it came time to hire the dancers, there was no audition. She just pushed me in. And that was sort of the end of it, the end and the beginning. I started dancing for her. And by the end of that tour, I was, working with her and helping her out with her little solo moments. And then right after that tour is when I started choreographing for her.
Just incredible. Wow.
But I will say this.
Our jaws
I started
are like
choreographing for her with the current choreographer who is in there, because I don't like the idea that I took that person's job, because it wasn't. He took me in under his wing. Brittany said, I really want Brian to work for me. And so I was ushered in with him.
Collaboration.
Yeah, because I've had that before where I've, had dancers on the project who go to the artist and say, you should hire me instead. And then they end up hiring the dancer, and the person who hired that dancer is actually ousted. So That's not how I operate.
Nope. No. Integrity over here.
That's the word.
This was an incredible story. Thank you for sharing all of that. We still have another Britney photo or two, so I hope you're okay with revisiting this path down memory lane. And this one, in this performance, your face is definitely still a little covered, but you're out there. You're a part of this. You're with the Princess of Pop. This photo is of you and Britney performing Slave for You at the VMAs. You're also one of the men behind the choreography. Tell us about this.
I mean, that was the moment for me with Britney, just because it was a live television moment. The Slave for You music video is amazing, but we were on set for 2 days and it was exhausting, and we're dirty and we're tired and we're, all the things. This is a one-shot moment where the song is playing live and you're out there in front of the audience. And the audience is going crazy. And the audience had never heard the song before. So it made it even that much more amazing that it was something so new and so special. And we really pulled out all the stops with this performance. We wanted it to be amazing. She deserved amazing. It was the first time anyone was seeing this new version of her. Her last album when we did the VMAs, it was her strip away and she was like, I'm a woman now, I'm sexy. And this is her really owning who she is and showing the world what she was about to be doing with this album. And I loved playing dress up, having the full weave sewn in and being animals and the body paint. And I wish I was that skinny again.
You look amazing.
Thanks. But yeah, the metabolism at the age of 20, whatever I was, 23, it was different.
Were there nerves going into like you said, she was, not that innocent anymore. This was a brand new song. What was like the feeling like before this performance?
The feeling was, let's fucking kill this. That's what the feeling was. Like, we all knew the song was a hit. We all knew that the world was obsessed with her. We all knew that this choreography that Wade and I did was going to be right for the song. We didn't know it was going to be done 25 years later on TikTok because we didn't know there was a TikTok. But we knew that we were doing something big. And it was funny because leading into this performance, which we were creating her Dream Within a Dream tour at the same exact time as this performance went on, the joke was like, we've done everything with Britney now. She had done so many music videos. She had done her tours and award shows. And like, there's nothing left to do except for like literally blow her up on stage. Like, we have done everything. In the tour, she starts like suspended over the audience and she rotates completely upside down while singing. And like, the pyro was amazing for her and everything we were doing. And we had a snake on her and she started in a cage with a tiger. We were really showing that she was the one not to be messed with and staking her claim. Of course, Madonna will always be queen and reign supreme, but we were showing that this was the new era and that there was a new princess.
Oh,
Chills.
love that.
Oh my gosh.
New princess in town. Well, let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
I am really curious to hear your thoughts on this iconic look.
Well, my thoughts are I wish we had better cameras
I know.
because it's so grainy, these photos. We felt so hot in that moment. I remember going in and taking these pictures. We were doing like a little run through of the choreography. This is when we shot the Pepsi commercial, not her first Pepsi, but her second Pepsi commercial. And we had so many different scenes in this. And, you know, we were the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. There were all the things. But then when we put this on, we're like, okay, this is what we wanted to do. You know, we did all those fun things, but this is who we are right now. And we were back in our hot 20s. Like she was 19, I think, at the time. But we finally felt sexy and we had to take our hot little pics before we went on set.
Oh my God.
Insane. And did you choreograph that commercial, the dancing in it?
I was assistant choreographer on this. Wade Robson was the head choreographer.
It's one of our favorites. We talk about that commercial literally all the
We've
time.
done episodes about those commercials.
Oh, wow. I love the first one. And I'm sad because I was on tour when they filmed the first one, so I couldn't do it. That's a FOMO job. And everyone always thinks I'm in it.
Right.
Just because I was around her so much at the time. But yeah, I sadly missed out on that one.
Okay, to wrap up our last two pictures, we're pivoting away from Britney. Believe it or not, I heard that you came out of retirement for the Lady Gaga Abracadabra music video. Tell us everything.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't come out of retirement for her? I would always be asked, you know, post my dance career. And I would still, it's so funny because I say post my dance career, but I went and danced for Janet after being a producer, director, creative director. After choreography, I would go back and dance for Janet Jackson just because anyone who I idolized and grew up listening to, if they ever say, please, will you? The answer is always yes. But it had been since, I want to say 2009 was the last time I danced for Janet. So, you know, 2020, what was this? Was it December of 2024? Maybe. Yes, it was. So that was a long time. I hadn't done a dance job in a long time. And in that gap of time, people would always say, is there an artist that you would love to work for that you haven't already worked for? And my answer was always Gaga. And of course, Madonna. I have never worked for Madonna and I would love to. And it's going to happen before my time is done. Yeah. But it was always Gaga. So when this opportunity came up, like there was no doubt I was going to do it. I had to fit it into my schedule because I was already booked up through the duration of it. So I was double gigging while the job was going on and running from one job in the morning until my call time on set. And Gaga was so gracious to work around my schedule, and Paris Goebel, who choreographed it, and her assistant, Gab Roberts. They really made it happen for me. Gaga was like, we'll make your shots later in the afternoon so that you can arrive on time. And it was crazy. I arrived on set, you know, the dancers had hours to go through hair and makeup in the morning. They threw me in the chair. They had like 20 minutes to get me ready in that look, like full weave, full makeup. I was buckled into this crazy costume and they rushed me on set and there was a stand-in standing in my spot until I walked in and I ran and there was no warm up and it was literally start shooting. And that's how the set days were for me. And I was just coming off of a torn rotator cuff injury. And I was not really even cleared to start dancing yet. It was pretty rough. And there was a physical therapist on set who saved my life. And she just kept working on me in between takes. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Being 47 years old and dancing next to 19 and 20-year-olds that I've trained. They're all my students and they are past assistants of mine. It was a really, really cathartic experience. Put me in a nursing home after. I was just exhausted. My body was broken down, but I was so incredibly proud of myself for being able to achieve that at my age. You know, it's long days on set and then you add another job on top of it. It was just the hardest thing I have ever done physically in my life.
I mean, what a testament to you, though, that you're in a room of like your proteges, people you've taught, and now they're achieving these incredible dreams of their own, you know?
Yeah,
like
my son was in there with me. And it was the first time we had done a job together because he had danced for me and he had done jobs that I directed, but we were never dancers together. And I never thought we would be. It was never really an option. So that was an incredible experience too. There were just so many different layers on top of it. And then after it all wrapped up, Paris Goebel, who was another student of mine, she's the biggest choreography name on the planet right now besides Sean Bankhead, who is another student of mine. But when I went up to her after and she was just crying and said, I can't believe you did this and I can't believe you're here. It was just such an amazing experience to see this give back and the evolution of all of the years of training these dancers. And it just lets me know that all that work that is hard and the traveling and getting to different cities and teaching nonstop, it all matters, because all these people that grew up taking my class are achieving such massive successes. And I'm happy to be a small part of it.
How incredible, Brian. We have goosies. That's bananas. Okay, we have one last photo for you, and it is another icon. We could do this all day with you.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Janet Jackson, here is a picture of you and the iconic Miss Janet Jackson.
That is the last time I danced for Janet. That is 2009. We did a tribute for Michael Jackson when he passed away. It was at the VMAs, and this is a little party we had after. Yeah, again, I was so skinny. She is like the pinnacle for me of artists and how to treat the people who work for you. Being able to witness her work ethic in the studio and having grown up being obsessed with her. It was some of my early dance learnings of pop material. We're standing in front of the TV, learning the choreography from her videos, learning Pleasure Principle and learning Rhythm Nation and learning If when I was a teenager. So to be able to dance with her and for her was a massive achievement of mine. And anytime she ever calls, I am there in a heartbeat.
Love that.
That's so cool, Brian. I mean, I know you know that, but just to hear your stories is so freaking cool. But we want to learn a little bit more about you. You started dancing very young, 11 years old, maybe probably sooner.
Yeah.
You opened your own dance studio at 16. Is that true?
Yeah, so I switched really quickly from being, a novice little dancer to a working dancer. I was spotted by an agent when I was 12 years old. I had been dancing for like a year and some months, and I went to LA with a friend of mine that won a scholarship to take dance classes at a professional studio, and I got spotted by an agent, and she came up to me and said, "Where's your mom?" I said, "She's not here. I'm traveling with a friend." And she gave me her card and said, "Have her call me." My mom called. They wanted to represent me. They had me come back to LA for this little audition so that I could be seen by all of the agents. They signed me. I had an audition shortly thereafter for the movie Newsies, and it was the first film that I ever booked, my first audition. And it took me to LA. We were filming for almost 6 months, the rehearsal and filming process. And for me, being a little kid who dreamed of Hollywood, and, this is in the early 90s. So pop culture was a different beast back then. You didn't know so much about everyone. There was, of course, tabloids and like teeny magazines and things, but there was so much mystery to the icons and the stars of that era. And you just wanted to touch this Hollywood thing. So being on set on the Universal backlot where they shot Back to the Future and Jaws, and we would eat lunch in front of the clock tower at Back to the Future, and the Psycho House was right up there. So like for me, obsessed with pop culture, this was like a dream, which is also kind of scary because nothing will ever live up to that. These memories that are made on your first job. But it happened really quickly. And then I just continued to work. I got a show called Kids Incorporated, which was a huge show of that era. And I lived in LA and worked nonstop from the age of 13 till just about 16. I went back home to Arizona, and my dance studio that I danced at, which was a small town studio, but I still wanted to dance with the girls I grew up with, even though I was working professionally. So I still kept that connection so I could be a normal kid. I was choreographing a lot for the dance studio and not getting credit for it. And it was around that age of 16 where I started to say, I want credit for my work. And my teacher said, well, you're a kid. You don't get credit. And, we would go to dance competitions and stand up on stage and we would win. And they'd say, who choreographed your routine? And we were told to say my teacher's name, even when I did it. So I said, I want my own classes next year and I want to have credit. And she said, absolutely not. So my mom was a dancer and a dance teacher as well. And she said, let's open our own studio.
Oh.
So we made that decision right after my 16th birthday. We opened up the dance studio. And at the time, I wasn't working in LA because I was no longer like a cute little kid. I had gotten tall, and they don't hire 16-year-olds to work. They hire 18-year-olds to play 16 so that they can have them work more hours. So I had this really strange chunk in time where I wasn't working. So me being impatient, as I always and still am, we opened a studio. And it was great formative training for me to be a creative and work as a creative director and a director. That was where I really learned to hone my craft and be the artist that I came to be. But, come me turning 18 and all of a sudden I can work again, that's where the difficulty came in, because I could no longer just be this dance teacher and run my dance company here in Arizona. I had to be in LA working, and I booked a tour for Prince. And that's the first thing that took me away for a lengthy period of time. And my students would have animosity when I would leave, and then I'd come back and I'd have to win them over again. And then the process would happen again when I'd leave for a job. So after 7 years, we made the decision to close the studio. And that was in 2000. And that's pretty much when I went out with Britney. And I was able to finally feel like, okay, now I can focus 100% on what it is that I am destined to do and become. And all of those 7 years of work that I put into the studio really taught me how to be a businessman, and it taught me how to be a creative director. And I didn't even realize it at the time, because I was just, in my mind making up dance competition dances and telling them what to wear and thinking of concepts. And I was like, wait a second, I'm a director. That's what I was doing. It was just I was doing it for kids, and now I'm doing it for stars. So it really transitioned well for me.
And so you mentioned how you got a tour with Prince. I also read you worked with Michael Jackson and Paula Abdul in these early years. Any memories from just being around these legends? What an experience.
Yeah. Right when I started dancing at that little dance studio, I made this list in my bedroom. There were like two lists. One of them was people that I wanted to work for, and the other was skills that I wanted to get. Like I wanted to get my aerial, like it's a no-handed cartwheel. I wanted to get my right, left, and middle splits. I wanted to get my 5 pirouettes, because at the time I could only do 4. So I wrote all these things down. And then the artists that I wrote down were Prince, Paula Abdul, Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, and Madonna. And I wrote all those names down. So in the first, 2 years of my career, I had already checked off Paula and Michael, which was massive. And then in my late teen years, going to 20, I was able to check off Prince. And then it wasn't until, my mid-late 20s that I worked for Janet. And obviously I haven't worked for Madonna, I said that. But it was crazy to check Paula Abdul off of that list. She was the biggest star on the planet at that time. This was in early 1992. It was a special for Disney. It was a pediatric AIDS benefit called For Our Children. And they hired a core group of dancers, and we did a music video opening with Paula to the song Zippity Doo Dah, like a funky remix of it. And they chose one dancer to be her partner, and it was me. And I was freaking out because to partner with Paula was crazy. And I was a kid, but I was still taller than her at the time.
Oh my God.
Because she's like this big. But we were rehearsing it. And the first take, when we were in front of the camera and it's out in the grass in a park, I was partnering her and I did this dip and I dropped her. The most mortifying moment in my life. Because at my studio that I grew up dancing at, we didn't work on lifts. So like I didn't have that upper body strength and I didn't know how to engage and use my plie and all of these things that I would tell a dancer to do if they were going to dance the artist. But I dropped her and she was so sweet. She didn't mind at all. And, she used to pinch my cheeks. And then fast forward to being a producer and creative director on The X Factor in the US, and Paula was a judge. And I got to work beside her then. It's just such a full circle moment to have someone who you idolize that then you work for as a kid and then you're working together as an adult. And she's still now to this day the kindest human, and I just adore her. And then Michael, it was Michael and Janet and Paula for me, like the three of them in terms of dance, like real choreography, and Madonna, I have to say. But Michael was the biggest thing like on the planet. He was the most massive star. I had a sequin glove in my room and I would like dance in the mirror to his songs. And at the age of 15, to be able to dance for him was like beyond. And I don't get starstruck. At least I didn't think I got starstruck. And I got starstruck when he first came up to us and met us. And we shot in front of this massive audience. And it was for MTV 10 is what it was called. It was MTV's 10th anniversary special. And he did Black or White into Will You Be There? And the movie Free Willy had just come out. And that was the song from the movie. And we were the kid cast that danced with him then. And he came up on this, or did we come down? We came down on an elevator. He came over onto our platform. We lower, and then he walks out to the stage with us. And when we got out there, the fans are all screaming. And he put his arm around my shoulder and leaned over to me and he said, "Why do they love me so much?" It was just one of these surreal moments where this like massive star is whispering something to me. And I just obviously didn't have an answer for him. I was just in shock that he was speaking to me. But that was one of the coolest moments. And again, like going from Newsies and then Kids Incorporated, a show that I grew up watching as a little kid, watching Fergie, Stacey Ferguson on that show, and Mario Lopez and Martika. I grew up idolizing that show. And then I was on the set. I was part of that show. And then going and working for Paula, and then going and working for Michael. All of these things happened in like a year time span for me.
Wow.
So nothing ever lived up to it. And it hardened me, not hardened me, but it took away the wow. I never had a wow the way I had a wow when I was a kid again. I had cool moments, really epic moments in my career, but those formative years will forever be the most amazing. But I mean, that's kind of what nostalgia is anyways.
Right.
It's hard. You take a great, yeah, totally. But you take a great vacation, and then every vacation has to live up to that vacation. Even if it's better, you may not think it's better because you've got this thing built up in your mind.
You're so right. Oh my gosh. So you're doing all that. You go back to LA after you sell your studio. And we kind of talked about your beginnings with Britney. I feel like you really worked with Britney when she was popping. When they popped, that's our podcast, when someone took off. I feel like you were with her like during her peak. Like We've had Tanya Barron on. We've talked to other people that have worked around Britney, and would love to hear your opinion on what made Britney such a special collaborator.
Well, Tanya has such an amazing perspective because she got to see the mall tour version of Britney, which used to be such a big thing in the 80s and early 90s. All these, when you wanted to break out as an artist, you would do your mall tour. And she was part of that mall tour. And then so to go from mall to arena is such a huge jump. I came in arenas and like amphitheaters. So she had an audience already. She was already the princess, but she was the sweet princess when I came in. I was part of, I guess the movement to Britney being a woman.
Yeah.
That was what role I played in her popping, finding her freedom, finding her voice, being unapologetic. She was the best of the best in that moment. And she danced unlike anyone else. She was the second coming of a Madonna or a Janet. And it's because those are the people she idolized. That's who she grew up watching and emulating. And star quality, I believe, you either have or you don't have. You can't really teach someone to have that essence. It is in them. And I do believe it's in all of us. It's just a matter of if we break out of our shell and allow ourselves to fully shine at our brightest. And she did that. And that is why everyone connected with her. You know, it didn't matter if she was being sexy or if she was laughing, like whatever it was, you felt like you knew her and it was so authentic. And I believe that's why she exploded the way that she did. And being part of that moment is unlike anything else, no matter what artist it is, you know, what movie it is, what song it is, what TV show it is. When things have traction, being involved in it is such an epic feeling. You know, heated rivalry is like the biggest thing right now. And I know what it feels like for them to have that moment. And nothing will ever take the place of that. And I see other stars that explode or have their moment, current artists, and I always compare them to Britney. And they never hit the mark.
It's not the same.
No shade. No shade at all, because I love some of their music and I love some of their performance, but it's the consistency thing. No matter what she did, it was always perfection. Even if she wasn't perfect, and that's the crazy thing, like, you know, and she would do choreography, she would leave some moves out. She would maybe not do this part full out, but then do the next part full out. Like she did it her own way. And I think that's what made it so incredible, just because you felt like it was authentic and that it wasn't a choreographer telling her what to do. Even if they were telling her what to do, she still would make it her own.
You mentioned everything that she did. It just really hit. I mean, you got the call to do the choreography for Toxic, another staple in pop culture. Any memories from that shoot or that time or that choreography?
Yeah. And I've gotten dragged a lot. Britney's fans have dragged me a lot over the years. They either love me or they hate me. It was when I was in the Femme Fatale era and I was called in to do that tour and the promo tour. And I made a comment saying, you know, Britney's a mom now. She's not going to be dancing the same. And literally it was just honest and from my heart, because she was approaching things differently. She said, I don't want to hit as hard, you know? She would mark a little bit more. And I'm like, okay, that's where she's at. And the fans just didn't like that I said that. They thought that I was being negative against her. So I've had a lot of issues, but another issue was around Toxic. And I didn't know this till COVID when I shared, you know, my Toxic experience. And I found out that Britney had done an interview on Entertainment Tonight saying that she created the video. And then the fans said I was lying because I actually put my treatment out for the video because I wrote the video. And the way that that all worked out, Britney was on a flight to Japan with her current director, Kevin Tancherone, who was directing her upcoming Onyx Hotel tour, which had no name at the time. And Kevin said, you know, I think Brian's right for this song. And Britney was like, yes, let's call him. So they called me from the plane and Britney said, I want you to come up with the treatment. And the one thing that she said is, I want to be a bunch of different characters. I was like, okay, perfect. That was it. So I got to it, and I had already written 2 videos for her in the past. I had written Overprotected Remix, and I had written I Love Rock and Roll, the treatments for those. And those were not as big of a scale as this one. Overprotected was, but I Love Rock and Roll was like a cheap little one-day simple set video. But this one, she said, you know, we've got a really big budget. And so I said, okay, heard. And I brought in my writing partner because I know she's epic and I didn't want this to fail. It felt like such a big opportunity. And at the moment, I knew what kind of opportunity it was. So I brought in my friend Caroline Rice and I said, you're so eloquent with your words. I want to make sure I write this right. You know, there's no chat GPT. So we wrote the treatment. I kept writing in people. I wrote Ashton Kutcher into it for the bathroom scene. I wrote Tyson Beckford into it, who actually ended up being in it. Wrote all of these people in, sent the treatment off to her. She was obsessed with it. She said, there's one thing I want to add. She said, I want to be naked, covered in jewels. And I said, okay, perfect. So we wrote that into it. And her team said, we are going to reach out to Joseph Kahn to direct this. And I was like, what? And he agreed to direct it. And they said, he agreed to direct it and you'll work side by side with him. So I was on set just next to Joseph, doing every shot, working it out. Like he was shooting my vision down when it came to the vials and the laser beams and the different color wigs and climbing up the wall, poisoning the guy. It was just, I was able to see what I conceive in my mind, how it could come to fruition when someone believed in it. And in one video of the year, did I win anything? Absolutely not. But I loved in COVID that I was finally able to share that story because I had never really shared the story. And then the messages came in showing me an interview where Britney said she made it up. So I wasn't surprised because of the way I knew that the pop machine worked. I did reach out to Joseph and they had taken my cover page off where my cover page says created and written by Brian Friedman. It was not sent to him. It was told to him that Britney created the video. And I'm not surprised that that is what her management did because it worked better for the narrative of this is Britney's. And so they told Britney, in all interviews, as they do, just say you created this. And, she did what she was told as a pop princess because that's the way her career was in the beginning. And even in that time, she hadn't been rebellious yet. So I'm not upset that she said that, but I am upset that my legacy and my work is in question. And that her fans think that it is me maliciously coming after her. Whenever I post something from that era, I'm allowed to. It is my work. It is my IP. And I will never veer away from the truth. So yeah, it was the most incredible experience, but it's tarnished on the end because of that.
Well, I think Kelsey can attest. I'm probably one of the biggest Britney Spears fans out there. And I would never think that about you. They don't represent all of us, okay?
I know. And that's what the fans do tell me a lot. There's so many of them that say, please, I know that some fans are this and some fans are that. And truth be told, I could care less what anyone thinks.
Amen.
I'm proud of my body of work and I will never stop speaking publicly about it or sharing it because it is my right to. But yeah, I think it's about educating people on what intellectual property is and the role that choreographers play. No one's going to get mad at the music producer for sharing that they produced the songs for her.
Right.
And, to be naive and think that these artists exist on their own without a team, everything is a collaborative effort. My choreography wouldn't be anything without Britney. My choreography wouldn't be anything without Max Martin making that music. It wouldn't be anything without Joseph Comp directing that video. It wouldn't be anything without Kurt and Bart, who styled the video. So it is a team that comes together and every team is important.
So true. It's a team effort. Thank you for sharing that. You did mention the Overprotected remix video. Is the lore behind that music video true? Wasn't that when her and Justin broke up and she came and dropped that music video?
It was, but it wasn't the most traumatic music video that we shot in that era. But that is when the text message came in.
Okay.
And I think she was more tough on the set of that. She was in a better space and we shot everything that we planned to shoot for that music video. Well, no, there was one scene that we didn't get to do because we were literally shooting the rain scene in the end. And there was supposed to be one club scene that came before the rain scene that was written in that we had to cut out. And it's after they are in the rain, they run to a club and they were supposed to go inside and be in this club. It's like the finish line that they crossed. They never got through that finish line. So we had to cut that scene because there was some delays in the mid-afternoon being on set, obviously. But the harder one was the boys' music video, which we shot after that, we shot in a mansion in the hills and she locked herself in a room for like a day, basically is what it felt like. We had a full dance music video top to bottom. Every scene had dancing and we only shot the breakdown and the getting ready scene. You have like a little harem scene with her and the girls and they're dressing her and then you have the breakdown. And that was literally all we ended up getting to shoot. The whole day was spent shooting the models and Mike Myers and Pharrell. Right. And that was a sad day because she just was really emotional and I wasn't prepared and ready to come out of that room. So that's when I started seeing, it get to her.
Understood. And then, oh gosh, I have so many things I want to ask you, but we have not enough time. But the Hold It Against Me music video. That is definitely a fan favorite. Can you tell us a little backstory on that one?
Yeah, that was a rough time for me
Oh.
because I hadn't worked for Britney since, well, we were together a lot in the post Kevin Federline separation. I was with her as a friend trying to help her get her on track. This is the head shaving era. And I was coaching her. We were in the studio. We were dancing. She was recording Blackout. I was obsessed with the album before it was an album. There were like 60 songs and they were all incredible. And we were dancing to Gimme More. And that was going to be like the next big thing. And without giving too much detail, this is when she ended up checking into a rehab. And when she came out of rehab, she called my assistant to choreograph for her instead of reaching out to me. And I think there was a level of, I don't want to say embarrassment, but I think she just wanted a clean start, a fresh beginning. And that performance that she didn't go over too well. And she had to fight back. And then Circus came, and Circus was incredible. I wasn't involved in Circus, but then coming after that would have been the Hold It Against Me era. And I got this call saying, Britney wants to work with you again. She really wants you back. And I was like, are you sure? Are you absolutely positive? Because I haven't spoken to her. And that was really strange to me, being so close to someone and not having connection. So I went back and we had a meeting, and the meeting went well, but she was very quiet and I was surprised. But I was like, okay, I guess this is just, it's been some years and she's got walls up. And I knew that the conservatorship was in place, but in my honest opinion, I didn't really know what that meant. I had never heard of conservatorships before. I just knew that someone was in charge of her finances and the decisions for tours and whatnot were being made on a higher level. So I was brought in, and the rehearsal process for it was just very different. Like I said, she was not wanting to dance as full out. She wasn't hanging out after rehearsal with me. There were people in the room when we would rehearse, and she was, like I said, walls were up, and it was a very different feeling. I felt like she almost didn't know me anymore. And that was tough for me to go from what we had to where we were. And I didn't enjoy the energy. It didn't feel right to me. And I didn't feel like she wanted to be there, which was very confusing for me. And I kept trying to pull it out of her, and it wasn't working. Moved on to Till the World Ends. I ended up writing a treatment for the video, which they gave, and Ray K ended up shooting my treatment again. And this video also won Video of the Year again, and I got nothing for it. It was also nominated for a VMA. I left the set for a time frame with an ulcer because of the stress that I had endured from coming back to work on this project. And I kindly quit. I bowed out of doing the tour. I was told actually right before that they were bringing in the director of the Circus tour, Jamie King, who is my mentor, actually. And they were bringing him back in. And I was only coming back as director and choreographer. I said I would only do this project if I was in charge. And so when they brought him back in for the promo tour, I said, I'm only going to stay on this because you lied to me. The conservatorship.
Yeah.
I'm only going to stay on this if I am co-creative director. He can produce it. And they said, well, he doesn't work in that capacity. I said, well, then I don't work. And Britney really wanted me there still, apparently. That's what I was told. So I agreed to stay on, and I did some of the promo tour, and the process was just terrible for me. So as much as I loved her, I didn't feel like she wanted to be there, and I felt like she was being forced to work. And I didn't want to be taking a paycheck. And so I bowed out. And that was that. I never worked with her or for her again. And, after the Free Britney movement and seeing how bad the conservatorship was and what she was actually going through, it makes sense. And I don't know what medication she was on, what drugs she was on, if that was the era of lithium. It makes sense for why she wasn't herself with me. It makes sense for why when I was looking in her eyes, I didn't see the sparkle and she felt like she didn't know me. But we have spoken since then, and I'm glad we were able to have a conversation where I heard her, actually heard her, and she was back and the sparkle was there. And it's been a minute since that call, but I'm optimistic again that she will get back to that. But yeah, that era was really rough for me. But Jonas Ackerlund, who directed Hold It Against Me, is literally one of my favorite directors. And I loved working with him. He's a creative genius. And choreographically speaking, I loved working with all of the dancers on that and what was created visually. And, you know, the editing style is so fast that you don't really get to see the choreography, but it was some freaking hard dancing for the dancers specifically. And I wanted it to feel like the Olympics of dancers. We've seen easy stuff. I wanted something that only those dancers would be able to pull off. And I hired the best of the best. And it will, for me, go down in history as one of the hardest pieces of choreography that I've done.
Wow, that's incredible. Just to wrap a bow on Britney, I can speak for myself. I was very disappointed to learn that you hadn't been contacted for the upcoming biopic by John Chu. And I just want to know what you make of that. That's absolutely crazy.
At first, I didn't make anything of it just because, you know, when projects are in their early days and they're attaching people to it, maybe they're not thinking about the dance aspect of things. And, you know, we don't know what the focus of this is going to be, if it's going to be on the movement or if it's going to be on her real life, and they're not even going to even have dance and choreography in it. But if they are going to have dance and choreography in it, and it is a biopic, it should be the actual choreography. You shouldn't be redoing. And by all means, I am not Britney's only choreographer, but I am someone who was there through many different decades of her work. And I feel like supervising choreographer is something that I should be. Personally, I would bring in all of the actual choreographers if we were going to be doing their work, because I feel like that's the right way to go about it with integrity. So, you know, the closer this project gets to being real and more people are talking about it, I expect to hear something. And I actually did hear from Britney's management that she said she wouldn't do it without me. Like, she didn't want the project to happen if myself and or Wade were not involved. So that was nice to hear. And then I did hear from John Chu's head choreographer, Christopher Scott, who I absolutely adore. I heard that Chris told someone that he wouldn't do the project if he didn't bring me in. So we'll see what happens. Again, it's still early.
Yeah.
The question was, who is doing it? I don't know.
Okay.
Not me, because no one has asked me yet. We shall see what comes with it.
Oh my God.
We can't wait to see everything.
We need you.
Yeah, we need you.
Biopics while people are alive are really strange. You know, they normally don't do them while people are alive, but at least she'll get a say, which is nice. And if she is not performing anymore, which she has made it very clear she does not want to do, at least in that capacity, at least we can have some Britney things in the entertainment world.
So fair and so true. Even with Love Story, you know, the JFK Jr. Carolyn Bessette thing, Daryl Hannah just wrote, you know, an op-ed to the New York Times. She's like, what you did is not accurate. So hopefully her being involved in some way will offer some control there.
Hopefully.
Totally.
Brian, we'd love to talk about your reality TV era. I mean, it's incredible. You went from choreographer to producer of some of these incredible shows that had us glued to our TVs every week. You were a judge on So You Think You Can Dance, and you moved to X Factor as creative director. What was that experience like going to TV?
It was fun, and it was more smooth of a transition than I think it looked like from the outside. That early era of MTV is what started it. I worked on shows on MTV. I worked on Becoming, which they would turn someone into their favorite star. I did Becoming Destiny's Child. I did Becoming Britney Spears. And then, you know, I would be on TRL every now and again. I went on and taught Britney Slave for You breakdown on TRL. So I had been doing some of those shows. So when it came time to do So You Think You Can Dance, which was the first show that I was on as a judge, it just felt right being a personality and being known for me rather than playing a character or being a backup dancer. You know, doing the first season of that show, it was such a hit. And I went from being noticed every once in a while out in public to being noticed everywhere I went, which was very different. and it took some getting used to. But that sort of put me in the spotlight, which helped because when I left that show, I was fighting for our rights as choreographers and judges on that show because I knew we weren't making what people on the other judging shows like Idol were making because we're dancers and we will always be paid less. So I fought for my rate and everyone else signed the contract. So I said, thank you, bye. And Simon Cowell reached out and hired me to judge a show in the UK, which parlayed into being asked to be a judge on X Factor UK, which didn't go over as I planned. I was moved to role of creative director on television, which I had never done before. And that's why I said my early years of creating in my dance studio was literally what I was doing for these people. And I'm like, wait, I know what I'm doing. And the things I don't know, I'm going to learn as I go. And it ended up becoming such a dream job. And it took me out of the pop music world because that was my normal bread and butter. And now all of a sudden I was working as a producer and creative director in television, which wasn't my plan. But I've always been the type that will walk through an open door. And Idol then reached out for me to do for their show what I did for the X Factor. Because when I went on X Factor, they just walked up to a mic and sang. That was when Leona Lewis won. And then I came on and the ratings skyrocketed because we turned it into the VMAs for every single person every week. And Idol wanted me to do this. Simon Cowell said, absolutely not. Don't. That's the rival. One day we hope to bring the show to the US. Here, take America's Got Talent. That's my show. So he gave me America's Got Talent as a consolation. And I started producing on that show, which was some of the craziest times working with sword swallowers and magicians and opera singers, like the run of the gamut. It was definitely a very unique era in my life. And I worked on that show for 4 seasons. I then ended up starting to do Britain's Got Talent as well. X Factor came to the US. I worked on the US version and the UK version. I would go back and forth for some seasons. Judged a couple other shows in the US, Rock the Cradle, which was an MTV show, which was rock singers or pop singers, children, them performing.
Nepo babies.
Like Kenny Loggins' child and Dean Snyder's kid. It was a really cool experience. And then I judged MTV's Top Pop Group, which was like ABDC, but for pop bands. And that show was very short-lived. It was Michelle Williams from Destiny's Child, Taboo from Black Eyed Peas, and myself judging. So yeah, I definitely had an era of reality TV. After 10 years of working on X Factor, it burned me out. I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week on those series, 3 to 4 months without a single break to come up for air. And I realized that I wasn't living anymore. I was just working. And so I gracefully bowed out and wanted to get back to having a life and being able to see family more and make memories. And that was in 2016. So I've had a decade now where I feel like the last decade I've really been able to live life. And I do jobs when I want, not all the time. I'm picky and choosy of what I take now. And I teach nonstop because that is something that I love and there's no stress and anxiety with it. It is such a give back and it's just a higher calling for me rather than stepping on set and killing myself for little to no outcome. Because I've done that. I've done everything I needed to do.
Until Madonna calls.
Until Madonna calls. That is a fact.
And then we are getting out of bed for Madonna.
We will get out of bed.
It's become so clear during our conversation how much mentorship means to you and teaching and instilling just the love of dancing in the next generation. So that's really special. That's something you're still doing, Brian. And what's next for you? Aside from teaching, what are you excited about? Where can we see your creations next?
I'm working right now on a documentary, which is all about choreography and creative directors and our rights and our abuse in the industry and our lack of health and pension and the fact that we don't receive Oscars at the Academy Awards for choreography. It's one of the only categories that doesn't receive an Oscar.
I didn't even know that. Oh my God.
The fact that our work is not copywritten. People are doing Slave for You breakdown on TikTok, and every time the song plays, the producers, everyone receives publishing. and we don't get anything for them stealing our choreography. So this documentary is going to shed a huge light on the abuse.
And your hope is that it'll change for the next.
Yes,
it'll change
correct.
the industry.
It's got to be awareness, and people don't really push the trigger or move the needle unless they are forced to. And we've been fighting politely as a peer group for a very long time. And all of the people who came before me in, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they've been trying to do this with no success. And we finally have a union now called the Choreographers Guild, and we're really pressing for unionization and standardized contracts and all of these things. But being polite doesn't really break down doors. So I'm ready to shine a light and do some exposing.
Oh my gosh. Well, we can't wait for that, Brian. Is there a timeline of when we can expect your documentary to come out?
Things have been pushing forward really quick in the last month or so. So we're hoping to be greenlit soon.
Amazing. Well, we're cheering for you always.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I know the negative people can be pretty loud, but so are we, and we're a huge fan. So thank you, Brian, for sharing your incredible stories with us. We're so grateful for your time. And
such an honor.
Thank you for your contribution to pop culture. You said yourself you're a huge consumer of pop culture. So are we, and you are integral to so many of our childhood memories. We watched your choreography on our TVs growing up. So thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Guys. Our conversation with Brian was incredible and illuminating, and he's had his hands on so much, and I knew that, but just hearing him talk through everything he's had his hands on is just my mind's blown perpetually.
Incredible. I love great storytellers. Obviously, we have them on the pod all the time. I want him to write a book. I want to listen to everything inside his brain. I also just so appreciate his advocacy for choreographers, for dancers, and just wanting to leave his profession better than how he entered it. It seems like he's always been trying to fix the pain points that he himself experienced, but there's only starting his own studio because he wasn't getting credit. Trailblazer.
Yeah,
how
he's
incredible.
Like an advocate. You're right.
How incredible that he's trying to make it better for everyone else too,
And just, you can tell how much he loves and cares for Britney. And I'm not in a good place. I was starting to get emotional. My eyes were welling up when he was talking about Britney and her pinnacle. And I was just oh boy.
I know. It's tough with everything we're seeing in the news right now about Britney. So it was really special to go back and talk about those really fun memories that they had together. And I do hope that he gets a call from John Chu because, man, it would not be the same.
They need him. Yeah, so everybody make sure you're following Brian on Instagram. We'll put it in the notes. He posts never before seen footage from the Dream Within the Dream tour every Tuesday, I think, on his Instagram. He's been doing that a lot lately. So if you're into Britney, make sure you're following him because he's got all the videos, all the stories, and we're grateful he shared them with us.
He's just incredible. Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing your stories with us. And thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you all so much and hope you have an amazing week.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.